How is the 2020 experience going to define China's economy going forward?
Yeah, well, I think the first quarter has been particularly difficult for China, because of the virus outbreak. But then, because of a better sort of a crisis management mode that the government adopted here, the economy actually bounced back quite quickly. I think going into the second half of the year, we're seeing, even till now, we're seeing new exporting orders coming through, like really strong historical high. We have run out of shipping containments, for example, and shipping rates is going through the roof. That is showing that overseas demand for Chinese goods is rising very strongly. So I think 2020 has been difficult, and it has been a testing year for China. But I think China has emerged from this crisis relatively well. We can't say it's unscathed, but at the same time, it really demonstrates the management ability of the Chinese government.
One difference we did see in 2020, though, was that there was no set GDP target. Are we going to see a return to GDP targets, or at least a range, in 2021? And what are you estimating?
Well, even though there isn't a explicitly stated target, but there is an implied target of between 4 to 5% nominal GDP growth for the next 15 years, so that we can reach the middle income status for the entire country. Because of this objective in the next 15 years, there is a implied annual growth of 4 to 5% nominal GDP, and because inflation is going to be about 2 to 3%, so therefore the real growth is about 2%, which is quite achievable in my view. So I would say that the first half of 2021 is going to be very strong, in part because of the basis effect. We have a really low base in 2020. And I think secondly, going into the first half of next year, overseas demand is going to be strong, going to be strong, because they're still bouncing back, in the process of bouncing back, while China is able to supply to all those demand.
Now, China's central bank has also been really signalling about financial risk quite a lot lately and controlling debt levels. We've seen a long-running crackdown on online lending, and recently just introduced a new scoring system for banks that are going to be deemed too big to fail. That's going to come in at the beginning of 2021. How do we maintain that balance between promoting an economic recovery, stimulating the economy, and keeping that tight grip on financial risk?
You can see that during this outbreak and during the recovery, the central bank didn't really turn on the spigot, to let liquidity flow into the system. So I would say that managing risk is more important now, because recently, as you can see, there's some default situation going on in the bond market, and it creates quite a bit of havoc in the market. So as you can see, the Chinese stock market is not going anywhere, while the rest of the world is making new high, which doesn't make sense, right? So I would say that managing risk is important, even though there are short-term costs that, for example, we may have to go through some bankruptcy, we may have to endure short-term market volatility. So risk is important, managing it is important, and I think the regulators are really focusing on the longer term rather than the immediate gain you can have, by flooding the market with liquidity.
One thing that sort of links in with that is the recent signing of the RCEP, that big ASEAN plus trade deal that was sort of spearheaded by China. But how is that trade deal really going to further boost China's trade, and how does it actually help the region cope with the effects of COVID?
Multilaterally beneficiary relationship for all those countries involved in this pact is going to be important, but exactly how it's going to be executed, because China can still produce what it needs, but then at the same time, because of the higher end manufacturing industries we have here, we're able to supply to the more sophisticated demand. So then at the same time, I think it may take some years for some of the countries to develop to become a supply base for China and also for the rest of the world.
Hong Hao, thank you as always for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here.